I think I heard it this afternoon. I always knew I'd hear it completely someday. I always had an inclination, a suspicion, but I was wrought with the skepticism of modern life, a skepticism that rewards those who follow it for decades. Yeah, I think I heard it. I can't forget it. I know what it was, and I fear next time it won't subside the way it did this afternoon. I parked on the side of the street because my wife's van was in the driveway. Like always, I slammed my car door loud enough to tease the kids. Daddy's home. I crossed the sidewalk and stopped at our mailbox, which was staked along the white picket fence perimetering the front lawn, mowed just the other day, might I add, and examined the mess of bills and adverts that had been slipped into the box. I flipped through the envelopes, pushing open the white picket gate with my hip and inching onto the pathway into the front yard. But I caught a whiff of whatever my wife was cooking inside and decided that whatever we had gotten in the mail could wait. It smelled greasy, crispening in the August air. After lifting my face from the mail to smell that aroma that welcomed me home, I caught a glance at the red plastic bucket and the 2 yellow plastic shovels in the driveway beside the van. I opened up the front door and walked into the foyer, almost tripping over a stuffed armadillo, but the smell of dinner and the bang of my children eroded any scolding that I could have done. My boys bounced over to see me before I could even close the door behind me. They latched onto me in a hug. "Hey guys," I chuckled. My wife appeared across the hall in the entrance to the kitchen, wearing a lime green t-shirt and a baby blue cooking apron over it. Her most prominent features being her hands on her hips, something she'd become a master of over the years since the birth of our children. She stood so, in a steadfast way like a superhero. "Hi, honey," I greeted her, my dying chuckle ending in the normal tone for her. She just gave me a smile and looked down at our boys, who were still clinging to me. "How was the beach, guys?" I looked down at the 2 of them. "Good," Thomas bounced. "Mom wanted us to build a sandcastle, but we dug a hole instead," William confessed proudly. I gave my wife, Lexi, a half-cocked smile. Our understanding of their cute but comic disobedience stretched across the hall. "It was the biggest hole in the world," Thomas said, bouncing up again. "Bigger than the Grand Canyon?" I asked. There was no pause or hesitation in my boys. They jumped together, going, "Yes, yes!" "Now, just how much of the beach did you guys bring home?" I asked, looking around the foyer until my wife spoke from down the hall. "I hosed them down when we got home." I looked down at our boys. They smiled up at me, apparently unaware of just how much they still smelled like sunscreen. "Come on, kids, let your dad come in," Lexi said, waving them away. They obeyed, the backs of their head bouncing with hair as they ran to her. I wiped my shoes on the welcome mat and walked into the hall, went upstairs into my wife and I's bedroom, and put down the mail on our bureau, undid my tie, and left it on the bed. I came back downstairs to meet my wife in the kitchen. I usually put away my ties, but the smell of dinner was just too enticing. "How was the office?" Lexi asked after I kissed her on the cheek. "How's the turkey coming? God, I could smell it almost as much as all that beach you 2 dragged home," I gruffed, ruffling each of the kids' heads. They were already sitting at the kitchen table. Lexi pirouetted and caught herself against the counter, propping her hand against it behind her back as she blew her hair out of her face. "It's so hot in here with the oven. Can we turn on the AC?" she asked. I couldn't say no to her, and it was humid after all. "Of course. Kids, go shut the windows and turn on the AC." They bounced out of their chairs and hurried off, the squeak of the windows being shut erupting throughout the house as they raced each other. I noticed that there were 2 pots bubbling on the stove, broccoli and potatoes. "I'm just in time to mash the potatoes," I said, in my way of offering to help, relieving my wife a little bit, even though she wouldn't show it. I strained the potatoes, put them back into the pot, and started mashing them after sprinkling garlic powder and Parmesan cheese over them. In the nick of time, we realized she forgot the gravy, and as the steam from the potatoes settled in my face, I hurried downstairs into the basement to retrieve a can of mushroom gravy. "Go on, sit down," my wife swatted me away from the stove. I obeyed her and plopped down in my designated chair and scooted it in. "Do you want a drink, honey?" she asked, as she swarmed across the kitchen table to set out milk for the kids. "No, I'm good," I shook my head, about to pick up my knife and fork before the turkey was even on the table. Adjusting in my chair, I caught a glimpse of each of my son's smiles. Their passing smiles stuck out in my memory because it was the last normal thing I saw before it happened. How clumsily I must have smirked back. I wondered if I turned my head too suddenly. I wondered if this all came about because I twisted my head incorrectly. And that's what caused it. That's what pulled the muscle of space and time that evening. This is wishful thinking, of course. I saw my wife bending down, 2 puffy oven mitts on her hands, as she pulled out the big tin-foil tray with the bronze-crusted turkey in it. It happened just as she went to spin around to face the table. A loud gong sounded like a giant bell tower, letting out one large chime, erupted in my ears. Turning, turkey in hand, my wife was turning slower than usual, while the gong echoed lower and lower in my head. My sons were smiling up at her, fidgeting in their seats, but slowly fidgeting. Just as my family almost returned to normal speed, an identical gong erupted in my head, and they all slowed down again, this time while Lexi was lowering down the turkey to the table. I was too confused to say anything about it. Evidently, it didn't affect them, or they weren't aware of it, because my son still smiled, and my wife had a look that said all was well in the universe. She swept her cooking apron out of the way when she went to sit down at the sound of the 3rd giant chime. It gave me a massive headache, but I couldn't cringe. I wondered fleetingly if this was a stroke or something, but part of me knew what it was. I can't imagine what expression I had in the echoes of that phantom gong, that phantom grandfather clock warning. Time must have moved normally for my family, but for the duration of that echoing, my face must have contorted into a display of absolute defeat. There was something final in that gong, the chime, the ringing, whatever it was. It reverberated in my entire body, leaving an ache all over my heart, squeezing my heart to the point of pumping fear into my eyes. But time repaired itself as the echo fizzled down into a low dinging, and whatever tears had appeared in my eye ducts had receded. Time restored itself, and instead of terror, my face must have just displayed a simple seriousness, an eagerness to eat. My wife had started cutting the turkey when I came to. My sons nor my wife had noticed what came over me, how fast everything seemed to move when time was normal again, when the kitchen unwrapped itself with a snap as if air bubbles of reality were popping, and this reality was its puddle. We ate dinner. I asked furthermore about their day at the beach, jokingly asking if they saw any sharks, and pretending like I hadn't just experienced an existential aneurysm. I pretended like I had an appetite, standing up to pick through the dark meat while each of our boys got each of the turkey legs, although the legs were a little too big for them. What lingering worry I had that the sound would return was assuaged then, and when I sat back down with my second helping of meat, I began telling myself that it was just some sort of bizarre headache. While helping my wife do the dishes, scrubbing a plate, and getting lost in the ballad of the sponge, I wondered if I had suffered some strange bout of heat stroke. It was a hot day after all, and hot inside the kitchen because of the oven. We sat down in the living room where one of the air conditioners was humming like a guard who'd started humming while standing watch. It was 7, and time for Wheel of Fortune. Lexi had scooped the boys bowls of pistachio ice cream. Maybe a mature flavor for their age, but they liked it, and liked it especially because of the chocolate chips she sprinkled on it. I had plain old vanilla, though. My wife is a genius, but she kept her mouth shut to let the boys have time enough to solve the puzzles. I could see the smart-ass look in her eyes as she cleaned her spoon of ice cream, as if keeping it there in her mouth would keep her from blurting out the answer. And when the Wheel of Fortune ended, the long progress of convincing the boys to go to bed began, chasing them around to try to get them to brush their teeth. The gong, as if from out of a cut in the cosmos, that chime came again, as if accidentally finding its way into my mind. I froze in the upstairs hallway as Thomas ran away laughing, slower and slower, the bounce of his steps becoming emphasized, the slower that time became and the echoes of that phantom chime. William scooted by me, his distorted laughter like a kite in his wake. Lexi scooted by me next, even slower. Her giggles slowed as it became absorbed by the phantom chimes, by the slow, drawn-out chimes. I stayed there in the hallway, my fingers twitching at my hip at a normal speed, but I watched my family recede slower and slower down the hall that now seemed to elongate. The hallway was stretching. The thunderous chimes were rolling out of my house. All the AC humming and laughing became completely absorbed in the echo of the phantom chime. My spine was a foreboding grandfather clock that crashed its bells against my heart. My wife and children disappeared into our bedroom, and I stayed standing in the hallway, watching the hallway stretch and stretch, but my height remained the same. But when the echoes were whining out and losing their reach, the hallway began to warp back to normalcy. But now this may have been my heartbeat trying to snap me out of whatever this was, just as the hallway was snapping back to me. There was a ticking, an old-fashioned ticking, a steady swinging pendulum like an old grandfather clock, in the absence of a cosmic chime, of the phantom chime, the gong, whatever it was. The ticking became domineering. The ticking was prominent. The ticking refused to let me move. I had to stay there and listen to that maddening ticking. Surely, even though time was restored, my face was stuck in an expression of astonishment, and I dreaded that my family would run out of the bedroom and see me frozen in the hallway, not blinking, not moving, just standing there with a 1,000-yard stare. That's what I had. It must have made my eyes crystallize with the dryness that comes from not blinking, my almost teary eyes begging for it to stop. I blinked. Thomas and William came rushing out with Lexi on their tail, smiling and leaning down to catch them. But like always, she let them get away and continued to chase and tire them out. My spirit stuttered. I limped around to join the chase. I jogged, even though I felt woozy. Eventually, the boys were in their bed. I stood in the doorway, watching Lexi tuck them in, and their nightlight cast shadows on the wall. They definitely were tired, all right. They clutched the hems of their sheets and looked up at her like baby birds in their nest. "Good night, boys," I spoke. "I love you." "Love you too, Daddy," Thomas said. William must have been too tired to say it back. His eyelids were fluttering. Lexi walked to me, and we walked back downstairs to watch TV. She fell asleep before me, which it's usually me first, but that night I couldn't sleep. I laid on my back, arms over my chest, looking up at the ceiling and waiting to hear the chime again, to hear the ticking inside me spring up again. How could I fall asleep beside her? I was too guilty. I knew why this was happening. Couldn't even bring myself to look her in the face in the dark, my consciousness clinging on to the constant hum of the air conditioner. I knew why this was happening. Yes, I knew why, but I'm too good of a man to agree to it. I am this way for my wife and kids because I love them. I never thought I'd fall in love. I never thought I'd have made 2 wonderful sons, but I love them just the same. I swear I wouldn't change a thing about my life, but I know why this is happening. It's a warning. The plain old job I wasn't meant for. It's a good paying job, yes. Benefits included, yes. It pays the bills and gives my family a good life, but it's not what I was meant to do with my life. It's not what outer space had in mind for me. The ticking. There it is again. I wonder if something is angry with me, disappointed in me. I let something greater than myself down. I'm not letting my family down. No. That's why I have to work tomorrow. But I know why I'll be haunted by this incessant ticking at the office. As I lay here, I feel the nebulous gases of another dimension slowly reaching in to grab me before I could complete my destiny. What my original destiny was, I don't know. I made my own destiny, and yes, it feeds my family, but why is this thing, this ticking, this chime angry with me? A disappointed original destiny. Is that what's pushing me or warning me? It feels like something is coming for me, or my current modern-day destiny is solidifying, and I'm out of time to change it now. I gulped. The people I love, the woman beside me that I love, the children that are part of me, are strangers to this original destiny. To this destiny I was forced not to choose. You're still here. Thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague here. Always a pleasure to see all my new and old viewers coming by for another one of my spooky tales. If you'd like to support the show, you can always take part in one of our channel offers through Fume or Aura, or you can just click on another video when they come up. I'd really appreciate it. For our newer viewers, we also have lots of playlists and other things if you'd like to get caught up. I know some of my series have been going on for quite a while. If you'd like to get my latest book, there's a link down below that'll take you to my Amazon page. Towesey Homestead just came out, so if that's something you'd like to get your hands on, go ahead and have a look down there. If you'd like a signed copy, you can go ahead and email me from my email address on the site, and I'll get with you about shipping information and ship you a signed copy. If you'd like to support the channel in a more monetary fashion, we also have membership through YouTube, and we've got a Patreon that you can get the information for in the description. We have lots of tiers and everything to suit your needs. Patrons that support on the $10 tier, that's our Ghostly Reader tier, get a book anytime I write one, signed and on their doorstep. As you may have noticed, there's a list of patrons and members on the screen, and I'd like to personally thank every one of them for taking a hand in the future of this channel. Well, that's enough for tonight. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.